You up, invest a dime, and you say you belong to me, and ease my mind. Imagine how the world could be so very fine, so happy together.
Hi, I'm a hacker, and your office may have great cybersecurity, but without strong cybersecurity for your cloud network, it's like taking candy from a baby. Go on, Carla, you know you want to.
Oh, that's not good.
Without the best security, bad things happen, even in the cloud. Checkpoint. Welcome to the future.
I'm Nathan Loznosky, Concurrency's Chief Technology Officer. Concurrency is an organization of change agents. We make a difference, and we partner with businesses on the change that they need right now. Concurrency engages IT operations to build an efficient, capable cloud for the business. It also partners with the business in disruptive change to bring about new revenue and to bring about operational savings. We partner with businesses like Brunswick Corporation on a connected boat platform and migrating them to the cloud. We also partner with businesses like Clover Imaging that are doing AI-enabled distributed warehouses. We partner with businesses like Duff & Phelps that need to engage their customers with modern app platforms. And also engage customers like Rockwell Automation that are doing secure modern workplaces. Concurrency partners with organizations that need change agents and have change agents. We're here to help bring about change that drives new revenue and operational savings in your business. Let's work with each other today.
very fine, so happy together.
And that is the entire super secret product roadmap. Okay? Remember,
not a word to anyone. This is some really good intel.
that's not good.
Without the best security, bad things happen. Checkpoint. Welcome to the future of cybersecurity.
to me and ease my mind. Imagine how the world could be so very fine, so happy together. I can't see it,
Hi, I'm a hacker. And your office may have great cybersecurity, but without strong cybersecurity for your cloud network, it's like taking candy from a baby. Go on, Carla. You know you want to.
Oh, that's not good.
Without the best security, bad things happen, even in the cloud. Checkpoint. Welcome to the future.
I'm Nathan Lasnowski, Concurrency's Chief Technology Officer. Concurrency is an organization of change agents. We make a difference, and we partner with businesses on the change that they need right now. Concurrency engages IT operations to build an efficient, capable cloud for the business. It also partners with the business in disruptive change to bring about new revenue and to bring about operational savings. We partner with businesses like Brunswick Corporation on a connected boat platform and migrating them to the cloud. We also partner with businesses like Clover Imaging that are doing AI-enabled distributed warehouses. We partner with businesses like Duff & Phelps that need to engage their customers with modern app platforms. And also engage customers like Rockwell Automation that are doing secure modern workplaces. Concurrency partners with organizations that need change agents and have change agents. We're here to help bring about change that drives new revenue and operational savings in your business. Let's work with each other today.
Is this one of your guys? Chuck, is this one of theirs or just for me? Okay. Where do you want me to stand? All right. Thank you all for coming today. Very excited to welcome our platinum sponsor here, Nutanix. They're going to go over some of the modern data center, what they see is going on, and go through a use case here. Little flash surprise party here with Kohl's talking about their use case with Nutanix as well. So very excited there. We have Tony Holland, the Field CTO from Nutanix, has been there for quite some time. Helped really evolve Nutanix, not just through growth, but also through mentality and vision, and very thankful that he was able to come join us today. So everybody, please give a warm welcome to Tony Holland.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Troy. Thanks to the WTA for having us. Pretty good group here, I think. This is my first presentation back from the post-COVID era. I was telling the guys at lunch today, this is the first presentation I've had to do with actual pants on, so that's a good thing. You guys don't want me up here without pants, that's for sure. As Troy mentioned, my name's Tony Holland. I've been with Nutanix almost 9 years now, so I was about employee 80. We hit almost 7,000 employees last year, I think, so Nutanix has obviously grown significantly. It's been a fun ride. Before I was at Nutanix, I was actually with a company called Compellent. Has anybody heard of Compellent? They're a company that got acquired by Dell, and then it all went to hell, but you know how that goes. No, just kidding. It was still pretty good. Yeah, so it's been a fun ride so far. We do have a bunch of Nutanix team members in the audience. You guys, the Nutanix guys, you guys want to quick stand up? So we've got Brent Lamp here, Koo, Spencer. Boy, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know you. Yeah. Healthcare, okay. There you go. Justin Bell, Sal. I think that's everyone. So obviously a good Nutanix crew here, your local team. Bob Weiler's walking in the door about now, not the guy in the purple. So obviously we'll be here. I'm hopefully going to be able to interact with most of you guys after the presentation. So make this interactive. I absolutely despise sitting there and having some silly vendor just talk at me. So feel free to interrupt me, call bullshit on anything, ask a question, whatever you want to do. I'm willing to run with it. So do we have mics for them to, or I think you guys can probably hear well enough. You guys can just shout out the question if you have it, raise your hand, whatever you have to do. With that, I think we'll probably just get into it. Any questions to start? Okay. So a modern data center. This isn't working. Is the USB plugged in? I've got juice. This is not running on Nutanix, so. You want to just flip forward on the slide for me? It is a Dell laptop, not my laptop. You'd think we would have tested this ahead of time, wouldn't you? We did test it. We had too much time in between. So how about those Bucks last night? Who was at the game? Anybody at the game? All right, one guy. Bucks fans at least, hopefully? Okay. I'm from Minneapolis, but not a Vikings fan. I love the Packers, grew up in rural Iowa, so I got my pick of whatever team, and I grew up in the 80s, and I luckily picked the Packers, not the stupid Vikings, so I absolutely despise the Vikings. It's an interesting start. Good way to chew up some time, I guess. Okay. Well, so I'll just start a little bit. Hopefully we'll get our slides up sooner than later. But, you know, modern data centers, who thinks that they have a modern data center today? Anybody? Don't say you have a flat roof on it. That's an old joke. Yeah, so to me, I think a modern data center is what we're talking about, right? A modern data center, in my opinion, is never fully realized, right? You're always evolving your data center, right? The slide that I would be talking about this right now is, shows the old Sun servers and whatnot in the 90s. We've all evolved into like the 3-tier world through VMware, storage arrays. We're kind of in this transition now from this 3-tier world to HCI to cloud. So we're always, your data center, in my opinion, is always transforming, right? As soon as you buy some technology, it's just about out of date, and you're going to move on to the next one. I hope I don't have to do this without a presentation. I'm not a very good dancer. I can sing, but I'm not a very good dancer. Let's just see.
Same thing you had. Recognize it.
All right, a couple technical difficulties. So if I had to ask, is anybody a Nutanix customer in here besides Kohl's? Got one over here. Anyone? Did I see another one? No? No, right there. Okay. You didn't seem very proud of that. This is a little bit of a small. I'm a little worried now to call on you and ask you a question when I see that kind of a response. So that's good. I'm guessing most of you have heard about Nutanix, right? You've seen us in these presentations. I used to cover Wisconsin probably 5-6 years ago, so I used to come up to Milwaukee and do all sorts of fun song and dance shows. Out of Minnesota. And we used to, my very first sale ever of Nutanix was actually in Wisconsin at Bauer Built Tire. Anybody heard of Bauer Built Tire? Do you have Bauer Builts around here? They're definitely around my neck of the woods in the Minneapolis metro area, but yeah, Bauer Built Tire. They were, I've never had a customer ever in my life. It was hooked up to an old DAS solution. They had 2-3 servers, I think, hooked up to it. And they had horrible performance from this thing. Of course, it was like 6 10K or 15K drives, and they had 30 or 40 VMs, so very small running on it. They hooked up Nutanix to it, and this is when our product barely worked. It was stable, but the performance was dreadful. Okay, I'll quit my story real quick. But anyway, we hooked up the Nutanix to it, had some SSD. They were blown away with how great it was. The performance was, in my opinion, wasn't very good, but they were very happy. They're still a customer 8 years down the road. So anyway, back to this. So here's our evolution of the data center, right? So we already talked about, is anybody managing Sun, Oracle, old stuff? Anybody here deal in this world? I never had to deal in this world. My world was always right here. I'm guessing most people's data centers probably look pretty similar to this today. Is that right? Yeah. We're obviously starting to see a lot more of this, and then the big evolution, hopefully going forward, is an automated world, the DevOps world. Everybody loves using those terms. But I personally believe, we're starting to see a pretty big transition. Who's using the cloud? AWS people? Azure? Everyone hates the cloud here, maybe. All the above. Yeah, that's the answer I think you hear from most people, right? It's a little bit of everything. We have a mix between all of them. So in my opinion, this slide is always one of my favorites because whenever I go into a customer, I can usually tell within the first minute or two is what Nutanix has to offer, something that's going to hit home to them or make sense to them. It's going to offer a reason for you to even look at Nutanix. And what is that? Rapid time to market, fractional IT, not having to buy these huge monolithic storage arrays anymore. Do you want it to be one-click simple to where you can go into one UI and say upgrade? When you think of a cloud vendor, they're doing updates behind the scenes all the time. One of my favorite asks to people who are using AWS, and when we have a solution in there and they say, oh, we can't do that firewall change until next month. That's when our next change window. I said, aren't you in AWS right now? I said, yeah. I said, well, what do you do when they send you guys a change control and you put out change control every time they make an update? Oh yeah, but they never screw up. I'm like, this is the world you guys need to get into. That's what a modern data center, in my opinion, means. Is an agile one where we can trust the technology to actually update and roll and allow you to do continuous innovation. So this slide to me just speaks home to exactly, if you're having these types of problems or this is what you're looking for in your data center, typically you want to have a conversation with us. Not all workloads and everything is perfect for us anymore, and usually I myself, I know Spencer and several of the other SEs in the room as well will say, hey, if this isn't the right thing for us, we won't do it. That used to be the use 5, 6, 7 years ago. There used to be a ton of use cases that didn't fit for Nutanix anymore. There really are very, very small corner cases anymore that usually we'll find that don't fit our solution to where we can handle it. But the biggest one, in my opinion, is this rapid time to market. And what I like to always tell a quick story there is one of our largest customers in Minneapolis was Best Buy. And they came to us because their CEO went to the IT staff and said, hey guys, this is about 6 years ago. Circuit City just went out of business. Retail had to evolve. Their CEO said, I'm cutting a check to Amazon every single month for $9 million. $9 million was writing out to Amazon. He said, they're crushing us right now, and we're cutting a check to these guys. We've got to do something better. So their team came to us, said, hey, Nutanix, we've heard about you. Can you really do this, what you say you can do? Can you spin up a data center, give resources to our developers like that? We did a little POC at the end of buying 26 nodes. They ran test dev on it real quick. And now I think they've got almost 1,800 nodes, almost 25 petabytes running on us. But it's just crazy to see how much you either have to innovate or die anymore in IT or in your business, right? And I think Kohl's is probably another example of that, right? You've got to innovate and stay ahead of the curve, or else you're going to end up like Circuit City. So what is this a picture of? Anybody know? Somebody's got to know. Come on, take a guess. My data center in my office. No, that's not it. Come on, somebody throw out an answer or a guess. What was that? Google, good guess. You hit it right on the head. I don't have a prize, I'm sorry. Maybe one of the sales guys has got something to give you. But yes, this is a Google data center. Our roots at Nutanix actually came from Google. There was a team of 7 guys that actually wrote GFS or were charged with writing GFS for Google File System. Mohit Aaron was one of them. He actually came on and helped found Nutanix. It's really our principles of where we came from, which is this build it local, scale up, scale out, right? Lego brick this thing one after another. You don't see a monolithic storage array sitting there anymore. So that was really Nutanix, where we came from, what we were trying to solve. And it's really been our focus for the longest time, which is AOS, our little code that runs on what we call our controller VMs on your nodes. Prism is our control plane. So the few customers in here, you know that Prism is what we have. We actually named it Prism before that whole Prism thing with the federal government came out, which is ironic that they lined up. But Prism is our control plane, and then AHV, maybe some people know about it, is our hypervisor that we allow you to use for free if you so choose. Obviously, ESX and Hyper-V work on us as well. But this was really our core. This is what built the business. This is what people were buying Nutanix for the longest time, was that just core basic infrastructure, make it simple. What Nutanix has done since, this has all been over really about the last 5 years, is we've added upon that. So we've built a really solid base, which we're going to talk about here, and then expanded upon top of that platform. So again, talking about the base, I want to just hit on this real quick because the base is obviously the most important part of this whole thing. What does Nutanix really do? So you buy a node, a server, if you will. It's got local SSDs. You can buy it in hybrid. Not many people do that anymore, but if you want to, you sure can. 3 nodes, not really is the minimum anymore, but it kind of is the minimum. So we're just going to go with 3 nodes. But from there, you can scale out at any type of nodes, whether it's all flash, storage only, compute only, maybe for an Oracle workload, an all flash workload. They all intermix together. You don't have to have the same types of nodes, anything like that. Mix them all together. Obviously, you end up with some type of a compute, a total amount of capacity, a total amount of IOPS. And as you individually add these individual nodes, you get X amount of performance. The big thing about this that I like to make sure to talk about is, number one, Nutanix makes sure that we balance the data across all those nodes. The performance and scale is linear, which you're going to see on the next slide. And then the other thing that I really like to hit on, and this is why I think we've really maintained our leadership position in your modern data center today, is media innovations and local performance. Has anybody heard of NVMe drives, I'm guessing? NVMe drives? I'm not getting a lot of hands out of you guys. NVMe, all right, I see some NVMe guys. So NVMe is a newer form of an SSD. A little better performance even than an SSD, which is so funny. We went from 15K hard disk drive performance was about here to these SSDs that are here. Now we go to NVMe's that are up here, and then on top of that we've got 3D crosspoint. That's pretty much, if I could stand up to the ceiling I would, but the performance is there. The beautiful thing about that is they're all local in a server. So anything that's local in the server, we can take advantage of it because of our distributed scale-out architecture. So that's really the biggest thing as we continue to have media performance and performance improvements, and we're putting it local in the server, we're making sure to keep that media close to the VM and close to its own data. There are other guys out there who say they're like Nutanix. If you really peel back the onion and look at it, they don't keep data next to the VM. The data could be across the network. We want to have it local right on the bus to make sure that you're getting the best performance all the time. I already talked about this. This is a very simple slide. But as, of course, your node, if you had the exact same type of node and you looked at it like let's do an iometer test or something like that, you're going to see linear scalability, linear performance across the entire stack as you continue to add nodes, which I think is a pretty cool thing, right? In the old days, I bought a new NetApp or a new Compellent or something like that. I'd have 3 hosts hooked up to it and performance was great. Then I had a 4th, then I had a 5th, then I had a 6th. What happens to my performance? It slowly starts degrading. With us, every time you add a node, you're adding more CPU, you're adding more SSD, you're adding more RAM. Everything scales linear, again, if you're buying the same types of nodes. Any questions with this? Okay. The other thing about Nutanix, I always just like to point these few simple things out because we sometimes get pigeonholed to say, oh, they're just a VDI player or something like that. All the stuff that you've known and loved, let's say in a 3-tier world or even in a cloud world, of taking snapshots, doing recoverability, asynchronous replication to a DR site, synchronous replication, metro cluster, those types of technologies are all enableable and there for Nutanix to save your butt, really, when you get into some type of an attack situation or a ransomware situation, anything like that. We have DR. The other really cool thing, this is something new that's been out probably in the last maybe 2 years, I would say, Spencer, or so, which is, anybody use SRM from VMware? Cool tool. I've always loved SRM. It's a little complex, but you can set up a playbook to say, take this VM, power it off, power it on to the other side, and make sure that your domain controllers go first, then this starts up, then that starts up, et cetera, et cetera. We've now built that, literally that type of product right into our DR playbooks inside of Prism. So if you do want to do some disaster recovery or spin out a separate set of your VMs to do a test, that's all natively included right in our UI. The other thing about it that, again, we don't typically get thought of, we offer archival storage. So if you have a backup player, Commvault or something like that, and say, hey, I wish I had cheap and deep storage to send all of my backups to, Nutanix actually has a player there. We have a 320 terabyte node right now. Minimal SSD, or sorry, minimal CPU, minimal RAM, of course, in it, because it just runs our controller VM. You scale a bunch of those together, now you've got a scalable solution to send all your backups to if you wish. And then the last piece of that core that we were talking about is AHV. So anybody here familiar with AHV or using AHV? No, okay. So Nutanix offers, if you so choose, a hypervisor. So we took KVM, which is a stable, well-known, good hypervisor for the longest time. Just terrible to manage, right? You had to put in a command line command this long to do every single thing on it, right? So we took our UI that we offer, Prism, and now through KVM underneath it, and offer what we call AHV. The nice thing about it is it was built, really over about the last 3-4 years, the UI at least for it. It's enterprise ready. It's got all the stuff that people really typically care about. Distributed networking, live migration, host profile, and high availability. Like, to me, if I asked a VMware person, what are the things you really care about VMware, why you have it? Usually we can check off most of the list. The one big one that isn't up here that some VMware people really care about is memory overcommit. So in AHV, when I give a VM 2 gig of RAM, we take it all. VMware, of course, you can share it if you so choose. I think that's becoming a thing of the past anymore, but that is one thing that AHV does not have that ESX does have. But it's a nice option. You don't have to use AHV. I think a lot of people, I think VMware actually does a good job of this when they're selling against us possibly. They say, you're choosing Nutanix, you're choosing AHV, you're going to go away from your VMware ecosystem that you've built. And in my opinion, I think probably still 60% of our customers on Nutanix still run ESXi. ESXi works wonderful with us. It, to me, is the most enterprise-ready solution out there. Put in our distributed storage stack underneath ESXi as the hypervisor. So again, we're all about choice, giving the customer choice to be able to run ESXi. If you've got an ELA coming up with VMware, might not be a bad time to say, yeah, I'm kind of looking at that AHV thing. If not, no big deal. We're happy to keep your ESXi clusters up and rolling and keep down that path. So the last piece is, all right, we talked about a little bit of our scale-out storage plane and our data plane. Now what about our management plane? So we have something called Prism. So I'm guessing most of the people in here, if you're in IT, are used to seeing all these different consoles and UIs and different Java applets you've got to have to maintain them. The nice thing about Nutanix is we're going to roll those all into one HTML5 interface called Prism/Prism Central. That's where you're going to log in to take care of everything. And you're going to see this slide a lot as we go through our presentation today, because really everything inside of Nutanix that we're going to talk about all rolls into Prism Central. So there's one throat to choke as far as going in to manage your VMs, manage your storage, manage your firewalls if you so choose, manage your NAS, manage your object stores. All that stuff is going to roll into Prism. And then the last piece of that is the easy button, right? So just like AWS or Azure, they're doing updates behind the scenes without anybody even necessarily knowing. With us, we've got what's called Lifecycle Manager, and you're able to pretty much do updates on whether it's your firmware on your hardware, disk firmware, backplane management, all those things down at the hardware levels, all managed through LCM. Up at the software layer, all the things we're going to talk about, AHV, AOS, ESXi if you so choose, all the other products that we offer in our stack, they're all managed through LCM. So you got one click to go in there and say update, and it's going to go and look at all the things that you want to update, put them in the proper order, and go ahead and roll through them in the background in a rolling fashion, of course non-disruptively, and do these operations. So very similar to like what you'd think a cloud would do behind the scenes. Does that sound like a good thing? Does anybody wish they had that in their environment today? Don't tell me. If this room really says they wish they didn't have this, you guys pretty much can all just leave right now, I think. Because I think everybody wants this, right? Does it really work is really the question. And believe me, it didn't always work for us. So as we move up the stack, so what is Nutanix doing now to secure your environment? You've bought our platform, you've bought into our platform, now what else can we do on top of it? So we've got a product that does network segmentation. So if you are an AHV customer, you actually have this tool. I think it's a tool. We think seem to think that it's a sellable product, but I think it's more of a tool or a feature of AHV, which is network segmentation. So I've talked to a lot of people that say, yeah, we implemented NSX. Boy, that was a battle. It took 6 months, and it's been a pain in the neck. And now we've got to maintain this separate environment for it, and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I said, well, what reasoning did you do that with NSX? NSX is a super powerful product. Well, we wanted east-west microsegmentation between our Windows 2003 VMs that we can't get rid of in our normal environment. I'm like, whew, it's a pretty heavy uplift just to do that. What Flow does, or our networking service that we run inside of our AHV hypervisor, just allows you pretty much to say down at a virtual NIC layer, this is simplifying it, but say, hey, port 80 can talk between this VM and that VM, or SQL servers, they can only talk to these web servers. It is a full east-west microseg down at the virtual NIC layer. So it's a very slick, very easy to use. There's no controllers to install. There's no extra overhead needed to be done. Super simple microsegmentation that's built into the hypervisor, which I think is really slick. Again, managed through Prism, upgraded through LCM. So moving up the stack further, we always got asked from a lot of people, hey, Nutanix, thanks for making our data center simple. Our VMs run great on ESX or AHV. We love it, but we've got this NetApp filer over here. And you know, it's been here for 5 years. It's worked great. We love it. But we'd really like to not have to maintain that anymore. We've got everything running on Nutanix now. What can you do for us? And I always my old answer used to be, well, you run a couple Windows file server VMs on Nutanix and you can do it. That was kind of a backwards solution and not a very good solution. So what Nutanix has done since then, it's been out for maybe 4 or 5 years now, is we actually wrote a distributed file server that now runs on top of our platform. So in Prism, you go and click a button, say I want to have a CIFS or NFS share. It asks for the server name, you give it a couple IP addresses, and now it builds a distributed NFS CIFS / SMB share for that literally can scale at any amount. So if you're a big VDI shop and you've got / server / home / every single VDI user, you got 20,000 users. That used to really hit a NetApp really, really hard because all those usually be on one aggregate. With us, because it's distributed, we go and distribute. Of course, you're going to have, if this is a 20 user file server, you're going to have lots of nodes, let's say 10, 12 nodes. We'll actually distribute those file shares out across all the nodes and all the clusters so that your performance for your file server actually will go significantly up for login times, et cetera, et cetera. So that's probably the #1 use case I see for files, but files is used for anything as simple as just home directories or video recording surveillance for a robo site that you want to send data to. It's just a nice option for, again, a simple checkbox to say, hey, I don't want to have to maintain a separate NAS I want to just include that on top of my Nutanix platform that I've already heavily invested in. Same thing with S3. So if you want to send to an S3 capable object store, same thing. Check a box, put in a couple IP addresses, tell us how large you would like this object store to be and how much data you'd like to take out of it. We'll create it. You just point your S3 capable client right to it, and we'll start sending it down to our object button. Worm capable, all the typical things that you're going to want out of an object store is available as well. What else was I going to hit upon there? I can't remember what it was. But yeah, so objects is just, again, another thing that you can simply check a box and you get it. Now, the last thing that I think is really cool with our solution is this on the left, be your right-hand side. A lot of solutions, when you buy them, you've got to typically buy some type of reporting engine to go and tell you what's on those shares. With Nutanix, you do get a analyzer, if you will, that goes and looks and says, how big are files, how old are files, who's last accessed them, what type of files is it, what's my performance, and it goes and digs really deep. It's a great UI. The other thing that you do with this is you can go in and dig through your data and say, yeah, it looks like when we get stuff over 3 months or 6 months or a year old, that's where a lot of our really cold data is. You're going to use this tool to actually go in there and build out a tiering model. So to say, hey, I've got my NAS, I want to tier those things now off up to really S3 in Amazon, or I want to tier it to my on-prem Nutanix objects. That's where you're going to do it, is inside of our little file analytics tool. Any questions with that? Questions on objects or file services? Yeah, anomaly detection is a great one, Spencer. Thanks for bringing that up. So in the world of ransomware and all the threats that we have out there right now, if we, as Nutanix, start seeing, so there's anomaly detection built into this, to where if we start seeing Spencer went out and started deleting 5,000 files or whatever it is, something's different than what Spencer does on his normal times, we can actually have our system automatically say, hey, Spencer's doing something out of the realm, turn his access off. So good and a bad. Of course, you can maybe really get yourself in trouble with that, but it's probably better to be safe than sorry. So anomaly detection, again, something that's built right into the solution, allows you to protect yourself from getting into big trouble. Again, managed through Prism. Upgrade, the lifecycle management of it is all done through LCM, which again is inside of Prism. So as you move up the stack, up we go. We're now into automation. So we're in this DevOps world today. How is Nutanix playing in that world? So similar to the story I just told about files and objects, Carbon is our solution for Kubernetes. So if you have developers banging down your wall saying, hey guys, I got to have Kubernetes, we've got to do K8 right now, please set this up for me. Usually they're not even going to ask you, they're just going to go do it. But if you want to keep it inside of IT's realm, you can check a box right inside of Prism. We'll set up a K8 distributed cluster in the background, and then of course you can put your developers to it to consume it. So again, very simple. We want to make it so that IT does not have to focus on maintaining and managing a Kubernetes cluster. We'll take care of that part of it, give it to your developers, enable your developers to go out and utilize that technology. Era is another one that database as a service, or if you want to have databases, Oracle, SQL, SAP, you name it, we build in provisioning for it. So if you want to have, let's say, an always-on SQL cluster, you literally can go into Era, point it at 2 different Nutanix clusters. It'll build the HA resiliency of the HA cluster pair in SQL, put them up on there, set it all up, and then on top of that, we start doing all your provisioning, the cloning. When I was an admin, I would literally be inundated almost every single day with my developer team coming up to me and say, Tony, our production database, can you refresh that out into staging or development or something along those lines? It literally was a task that I pretty much did daily. I'd pull it out of Commvault and I'd restore it, right? With Era, you in essence, all that copy data management is built right into the tool, and it uses our snapshots so that you literally can have it go and provision those databases and refresh them in a matter of minutes on whatever type of a schedule you want. So if you want at midnight to say, go and take our production database and clone it down to, test, dev, stage, et cetera, all those things will be done with one simple click right inside of Era. So to me, that's the most valuable part of Era. But again, a simple tool built right into our platform, easy for you to use. Very, very powerful. And the last piece of it is Calm. And Calm is I liken it a little bit to VRA. So if anybody a VRA, VMware customer, it really is where you can build out applications. What I love about it is you build what we call as blueprint. And what we do with the blueprint is you build your application in whatever type of code you'd like. And then from there, we know how to talk to the APIs of Azure, Amazon, vCenter, Nutanix AHV. There's about 10 other providers that you can have up there. And once you build that blueprint, now if I want to say deploy to AWS, go. It knows how to go talk to AWS. You've, of course, put your credentials and certificates in, but it'll go out and deploy it out into AWS. If you want it to deploy on-prem to AHV or maybe your legacy ESX environment in your HP 3PAR, it'll do that. It really doesn't matter. This is actually offered outside of even being a Nutanix customer. You can buy this as a service from Nutanix where it runs in the cloud. So it really is our answer to VRA, but it's much more open, right? It's not locked in to say, we want you using all VMware technologies. This is much more open, allows you to choose the right place at the right time for your applications. Again, in Prism, managed through LCM, our update manager. Of course, if this is managed in the cloud, you guys don't have to have it. You don't have to have Prism on-prem. You would manage it in our cloud interface. And then as we talk about modernizing your data center, this is really kind of the piece that's going to help talk to what Nutanix is doing in the future. So we talked about the core, what we can do on-prem in your current data centers. But if you really want to move into this modern data center, to me, you're starting to stretch into the clouds. We want to be able to utilize clouds and have clouds be a part of your ongoing plan, right? I don't think anybody out there is going to say, we're not using AWS, we're not using Azure, we're not using any of those public cloud services. I think you should. I think you should build applications that belong up there, but anybody who thinks that they're just going to say, we're moving everything to the cloud or vice versa, that's usually wrong, right? It's always a it depends answer. Put the right things up there when you can. Keep the right things on-prem when you can. Has anybody done the big move of, I bet I've talked to 5 customers this last month that have said, yeah, we had a CIO come in and he said we're moving everything to the cloud. And they did. And guess what? Half of their applications didn't even work. And then about 3 months later, it all came back. So you raised your hand. What happened?
Exactly what you articulated.
Yeah. So I am not one to say the public cloud's garbage. It's not good. I absolutely think there's a use case for it. But just like everything, good things come in moderation, right? So some things absolutely belong there. Some things absolutely belong on-prem. I see a lot of people trying to push applications up there that have legacy applications on-prem, and now it's talking over a WAN link every single time it wants to talk to that application. Well, that's not going to work. It will not work. It will fall flat on its face. So anyway, let's see here. I clicked forward. I got a little excited. So here we go, the hybrid clouds. So all that stuff that I talked about with Nutanix, what are we doing with the public cloud? So what we're doing, we have a product offering called Nutanix Clusters. It's a great marketing term for a simple thing. And what we're really doing is taking bare metal infrastructure in public clouds. So in AWS, they have what's called bare metal. Azure has a type of bare metal. You can acquire that bare metal from those public cloud providers, and it runs our software. So we've got a simple process that goes out and foundations them, is our term for it. It goes and throws our software down on it, IPs everything up. And now, in essence, you've got Nutanix running on-prem, possibly. You've got Nutanix running in a public cloud, and we're now merging that with all this stuff we've been talking about. All the possibilities that we talked about is now possible to be up in the public cloud, or the private cloud, and we're going to use the same UI. That Prism interface is exactly the same. VMs can now migrate between the two. We're not pigeonholed into any one of them. You can have multiple clouds all working, all using the same exact control plane, which in my opinion is probably the most important piece of this whole story, is a common control plane across all of it. That's usually where people really get hung up. Let's see here. I think you guys are probably really impressed with this, but this is one feature that I really like about our solution, is when you do get running on Amazon EC2 bare metal instances here in AWS, and your VMs are actually running up there, if the business has invested maybe in newer applications, Mode 2 applications, whatever you want to call them, that utilize RDS or S3 or any of these cool Amazon solutions that are up there, you have native access to them. So there are other vendors out there that have cloud-like services, but when you're running in them, you actually have to route back into your data center and then back out to Amazon. With us, you have sub-millisecond latencies to all these goodies that you have at Amazon. So imagine that. You can have your legacy applications, your legacy VMs, slide right up into AWS, and then from there they have native access to all the goodness of AWS services. So I have seen this use case used quite a bit to say, hey, we've got a struggling app that needs to talk to those services. Let me slide it up there the easy way without having to refactor it. You have a question?
Azure services.
Say that one more time.
Replace AWS with Azure. What does it look like?
So it's very similar. Very similar. So we have not went GA with Azure yet, or Azure, however you want to say it. So we will be GA probably. Well, we've got a big conference coming on, and I'm guessing you're going to hear about it at that. But we are doing demos and test pilots with people right now. But very similar. Any other questions? We've got a couple. Here are your use cases that hopefully I talked about. You know, again, if a CIO says we're going to move everything into the cloud, to me, refactoring all your applications is a no-go. That's not going to work, and I think anybody who's ever tried it knows that that's not going to work. But if they really want to pay the bill and say, I just want to get everything up in AWS and I don't want to have a data center anymore, this is probably the easiest possible way you can do it, is throw a Nutanix up there, migrate your VMs, whether it's with Zerto or native replication technologies, whatever you want to do, and now you've got your data center running in Amazon. You'll be up there for about 6 months until you have the bills, and then you'll probably be rebuying infrastructure, run it back on-prem. But that's a lift and shift use case. On-demand elasticity, so we have a lot of retail customers, again, where I'm guessing a lot of your business, I know at Best Buy when I used to deal with them, they make the same in 1 month of what they make for all the rest of the year in their business, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me, but pretty cool. They want elasticities to be able to burst up and not have to buy for all that capacity. This is a great use case to say, hey, I've got this Nutanix running on-prem, it does all of my stuff for 11 months out of the year, but I want to quickly burst up to AWS for 1 month and then shut her back down. Great use case for it there. We also are starting to see a lot of people say, I don't want to have my DR site. So they're setting up a small cluster, a 3-node cluster in AWS, replicating everything there. And if a disaster actually does happen, scale out your solution in AWS, and now you can fail over to that secondary site up in AWS, run there up until you can get your data center working again. Anybody know how we manage it? Please, somebody say Prism, or else I've failed miserably. Prism is how we manage it, right? How do we do software firmware's updates of it? LCM. LCM is how we do it. Same way that you do it on-prem, that same control plane, manage it when you're running up in AWS. So, we're almost done. We'll get the star of the show, our friends at Kohl's up here real quick. But the last piece is, you know, to modernize your data center, in our opinion, from the Nutanix standpoint, right? Simplify your operations by having that one-click operations. Hopefully you can do all your updates with zero downtime. Run any workloads, so we're not going to say you can only run desktops. That used to be Nutanix's pigeonhole, was everyone, Nutanix is only for VDI. That is definitely not the case anymore. We're the very first solution ever certified for SAP HANA. So I think if you can run SAP on us and some of the largest banking applications in the world, I think you can pretty much run anything on us. Of course, we offer all the different types of data protection. If you want VM storage, container storage, database automation, all those things. And the last piece is really choice. We want to allow you to choose what hypervisor you want, what cloud you want to run on, what type of hardware you want to run on. You don't have to run on our hardware. You can run on Cisco, HP, Dell, whatever it might be. And then, of course, the licenses. So if you buy X amount of licenses for your on-prem data center, if you want to now use AWS, those same licenses can just slide right up there. So our licenses are portable. They can go around wherever you want. So with that, that was a real quick introduction of what Nutanix is doing today to hopefully help people modernize their data center. I hope that you got a little bit out of it. I think I will, number one, I'll stop for questions. And then number two, I will be around afterwards to hopefully answer any questions if you don't want to blurt them out in this room. So is there any questions online that anyone asked? I'm just failing miserably today. Here I was all excited about this. I just can't even get a question out of you guys. Any questions?
What was that interface we manage everything with here?
Hopefully the crowd answered. Prism. Prism is our interface. Any other questions? Doesn't have to be about the presentation, anything about our company solution, anything. Okay, good. Is Aaron Rodgers going to play this? Yes, he's going to. He's going to play. All right, well, let me bring up Bob Weiler.
I want to stand up and stretch for a couple seconds so we get the mic switch.
Yeah.
We'll start pretty quick.
Bob Weiler, Pat Lee from Kohl's, so they're going to come up and talk about how they put Nutanix to work in their data center and modernize their data center.
All right, are we all ready to begin? I'm ready. We'll get everyone on. All right, well, thank you for attending. I don't know what's wrong with this, but everyone seems to be crushed in that end of the room, so we'll do our best to draw you in. Hopefully we get some questions. We brought Pat Lee here from Kohl's, so he's one of their senior architects. Ask any and all questions. Kohl's has seen a lot of stuff. So being in retail, which is a very competitive environment, obviously you got the Amazons, you got a lot of the really big customers. They have to continually innovate. They have no choice but to continually innovate. So when Tony asked Spencer and I which customer would be willing to help us with a modern data center conversation, what was our first choice?
Kohl's.
Good answer. So yeah, we're just gonna take you through some of the highlights on how Spencer and I view successful IT orgs, and then Pat's gonna add color in how Kohl's does it, some of the good, some of the bad, some of the ugly. Obviously, Spencer and I've been here for 7 years. We're a sales team, so we've talked to tons and tons of customers throughout the state. We see everything. So it's a refreshing to work with a customer like Kohl's who gets IT and does it the right way. We don't always agree with their product decisions sometimes, but in the end, you guys do what's best for you, and we try to help you along and give you good choices at least. So with that, let us begin. So what do we strive for in IT, and what does any organization really strive for? Well, simplicity, right? In the Agile Manifesto, it's the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. Now, Dilbert would say, you know, if I do nothing in life, then I do nothing in work world, so therefore I've maximized my effort. That's not true, but anyway, this is the important thing. Isn't that everything is simple, because things aren't simple. It's the idea of abstracting complexity and making it appear simple. So we'll go through some of the techniques and tools, and Coles will discuss some of the things that they do to help simplify people's lives, especially the end users and the consumers of our solution sets. So finding simplicity requires rethinking a lot of our old mindsets. I mean, in IT, a lot of us are really steeped in the old ways of doing things. Sometimes you need to completely rip off the covers and start over. And this is one of my favorite RFP requirements from Coles, one of their latest RFPs, rethink everything. So nothing was left as the holy grail. We can't touch this. They were literally rethinking everything. And because of COVID and all those other things that we've experienced recently, that became even more important, because they had to become even more efficient as they had furloughs and layoffs and things like that. So it was a very challenging environment. You always have to rethink what you're trying to accomplish. So it's kind of hard for me to see this slide, but this is the timeline. So in the greens are the Nutanix product set. So on the left, let me see if this works. On the left here is what Tony was talking about, our platform, the Nutanix platform. So that's the hyper-converged infrastructure. So we layer in services, be it files, objects, microsegmentation via software, so software defined. In the middle, we started to get more into the multi-cloud world, and now we're getting more and more into what we call our hyper-converged clouds. We want our software to converge and abstract the complexity of clouds. So Tony showed clusters and how we utilize that. So you can utilize your same pieces of software and the things that you've built on your premises also in the cloud. So that really simplifies the things that you can accomplish. So if you look at the journey with Coles, so Nutanix was founded in 2009. Tony sold his first block probably in here, the one that barely worked, right? So Coles started with us in 2015, right before the holiday season there, to do virtual desktops, to do a part of their credit card processing area. So the interesting thing is Spencer, they asked him to size for the maximum. So our technology is really flexible, but they said size for a maximum of 3,900 users or concurrent connections. Coles hit 3,904. I remember we were getting calls at Thanksgiving when the website was just going nuts. Our processes were peaked at 100%. And we had an on-site SRE, someone that was overseeing our class, said, don't worry about it. Our systems can run at 100% forever. We're not going to fall off a cliff unless you get to 4,000 or 4,200. Then you're going to see some performance degradation. So Coles was really surprised that we could hit and maintain that performance level. And the reason we can is, as Tony mentioned, we're web scale. We're based on that Google distributed file system. Our scale is linear, and we'll maintain that performance level. We don't fall off a cliff. So that was a very important thing, and that's really where Coles realized, hey, this technology is pretty reliable. I remember you came in maybe a little later into our technology than that, but that was one of the first things. So, but from that, we earned the right for the next 6 holiday seasons to get more and more. So we got into their security and management aspects, more VDI. We started to do point of commerce, so much more business critical functions, et cetera, in private cloud, and pretty much now we run their 3 data centers. So when you were looking at the Nutanix technology, I mean, you had a lot of things that you were trying to accomplish. What were some of the challenges that you were trying to address, and why did...
Yeah, I owned the Unix world and Linux world in its early days when we were still running on all physical servers. Took it through, brought in virtualization, and that helped solve a lot of problems. But then there are additional problems that it didn't solve, right? Because you have all your compatibility issues, firmware upgrades, your networking, your storage, your compute, all working together in a seamless manner, right? And that's in a large data center, that became an insurmountable challenge for us. We just couldn't get it right. We were always having problems with it. So Nutanix brings to that table that modular approach with a standard upgrade path and a one-touch, right? Today we have basically 2 people managing our entire cluster in our corporate data centers. So that's what it was brought in to solve, and it did it.
Yeah, you started with the legacy 3-tier and then you had the purpose-built 3-tier Interact, validated solutions, the V-blocks, and then you migrated into the HCI world.
Yeah. V-blocks were used selectively, I would say. We were predominantly a blade architecture. But yeah, it was a journey. We progressed, right? And as you said, we brought it in for some early use cases. You earned the right to be brought in. And today, I think in the this last quarter, we basically have removed every other Linux architecture. Just Nutanix is there now.
Okay. You want your mic up a little bit.
And then we're also expanding.
Show us your muscles.
Yeah, out of our data centers and into our branch locations as well with Nutanix.
Yeah, so a lot of different things. So this, to get to Tony's point too, yeah, we started in VDI, and this is where this is the only thing we could do back here at the beginning. But now we do everything, Oracle, SQL, you name it, the heavy duty hitters. And we can size it to any type of performance workload, and our scale is linear, so it makes it real effective. As I mentioned, we went through 6 holiday seasons, and the last one, AWS had a little hiccup, so they had moved some of the processing out to AWS workspaces. Luckily, we maintained a footprint, so we extended the maintenance. Because of COVID, we didn't have a chance to take out a lot of our gear, so we extended maintenance just to get them through the peak period. They were able to move that traffic that was on Amazon back to us, seamlessly fire it back up. So basically, Nutanix saved Christmas this year. That's what Spencer and I like to say anyway.
Yeah.
So
that's what we like to think, at least.
Yeah. And even better than that, we saved Christmas at the Johnson household because Kat, Spencer's wife, got to use some Kohl's cash. So. Yeah. I don't know, Spencer, do you have any comments on this slide or anything you want to bring up?
I mean, I think one thing I want to note is that Tony and I built a really good sizing spreadsheet to handle that first VDI workload. 3,900 users is what we sized for. But it was really impressive to come in and see that when you push the system, not only did the compute and the desktops respond well, right, that we also were able to maintain the I/O performance behind the scenes too. That, like to Pat's point, right? We earned the right to be at the table, right? We proved ourselves, and then we continued to build the use cases on. As we continue to build the use cases, not only with the HCI platform itself, but more and more functionality, like Tony went through with files is a possibility, objects. And we start thinking about things more of a platform first decision. What can this platform accomplish and do for us before looking at external solutions like a NetApp or an Isilon, not always specifically in your use case, but in general. Yeah. Or do we use the built-in native replication tools versus a Zerto, right, and pay for extra functionality that's already built into the product? And I think that's one big thing about modernizing the data center is that we all are trying to develop our own platform to some degree. That's how we matured in IT, right? We didn't have a one-stop shop that could really do just about everything you can. My advice, right, as I see a lot of things out here, I'm getting a little ahead on a future slide here, but it is to start thinking about what can the platform do for you before looking somewhere else, right? And if you don't have that platform, maybe it's time for you to start looking for that platform that can do that, the majority of what you need in your data center.
Yeah, so we're going to dive into the Kohl's private cloud V1 and V2 and the things that they're doing. So we'll get into what Kohl's is specifically doing and why this is a good way for them to be able to layer on their services as we move forward in the presentation. Again, we saved Christmas for Kat and Spencer. Who loves Kohl's cash? My wife does. That's right. That's a great hook to get us coming back. So here's the way Kohl's data center looks. Remember Tony showed the Google data center? Well, Kohl's looks the same. The only difference is it's not pretty cables in this picture. But Spence, you want to kind of touch on what the design looks like?
Yeah, we've gone through a few different iterations, right? Our clusters can scale up very high. With 32 nodes, we've gotten up to, I think, 56 nodes in your environment and some of the VDI clusters, which is great, right? It's awesome. I keep adding resources like Tony's slide showed. We can continue to scale performance and capacity. We can mix and match to get the right blend of what we need for CPU memory and capacity. But we ultimately redesigned this. This is the third iteration now of your data center where we've drafted a cloud-like concept of availability zones. So we take a look here. It's going to be hard to see. Bob points it out. Each rack is considered an availability zone, and within an availability zone, I have 4 different kind of zones themselves. So this is zone 1, A, B, C, and D up the chain. And we kept the cluster sizes smaller under 8 nodes, simply because we can upgrade them in your maintenance window. And just by doing that, we can dramatically reduce the upgrade time, the resources, and taking a look at just the people capital, right, that is available to do the work. Now we get more efficient. And then from an app distribution perspective, we can easily identify this cabinet is in a zone in this data center, which would be my region. And we can easily identify where to properly place, highly available apps in regions and zones. And then with every different availability zone, I've reduced my risk, right? So ultimately, we've gotten to the point where we're over 1,000 nodes, over 100 clusters, and 50,000 cores and 500 terabytes of RAM it's a lot of capacity, right? So,
yeah, and that's this is going in right now. So we're being 5 years into this journey, we're starting to do major upgrades. So right now we're going on a 400 node refresh. And with the new density of the hardware, we're going to reduce the number of servers by half. Just think about that though, especially if you're in a colo, right? You don't need as much space in your cage, right? Think about it from a software perspective. ESXi and Red Hat, for instance, are node-based licenses, right? The savings that you're going to get out of that.
Yeah. I think it's provided some extra flexibility around reducing switch ports as well, right? So we cut our switch requirements down in half. That was a big cost savings. And yeah, I mean, I think it's all about looking at the bigger picture again and saying, how can we modernize on this journey, as Tony was pointing out before. It's like the modern data center is never complete. What's the next iteration of this? I'm sure our next iteration will look different than what this one does.
Yeah, so the highlight is that it's just everything is the same. This is all the compute and storage for any service that they run. They don't need purpose-built hardware. Yeah. This doesn't even have to be Nutanix servers. Yeah. We just build the web scale software layer, and then all the services are just software defined that get enabled via Prism, right, Tony? Yeah. Little push buttons, and that makes the platform. So it's just the service delivery platform, and on top of that, you can layer anything, all your automation goodies, or whatever it is. So that's the advantage of having a very flexible,
One other thing I want to add here is that we call this a standard unit of scale, right? And we're getting more into customers with larger footprints like Kohl's. Is the standard unit of scale really becomes a pod, right? Which is 8 nodes, right? 1 zone. Every time we need more resources, I get 8 zones. Whether this is either a zone, a pod, or an individual node, right? Because of our linear performance, we can predict exactly what you're going to get to it. So when you come up to a new project, say you've only got 3 nodes to start with, and somebody says, hey, I need 60 more VMs, each node runs 30 VMs or so, right? And you guarantee that performance. Come back with a quick budget, I need 2 of these standard nodes to scale up my infrastructure. Versus the 3-tier infrastructure world where you're talking about 1 availability zone, which is your single point of failure for SAN, in a data center typically, right, with a bunch of nodes, and then you tip over at some point. And then you got to buy the next thing or upgrade to larger controllers. So it becomes a really linear way to size and give quick answers back to the business without even engaging the sales team sometimes, if you know how your things are responding and how your apps are built out.
I
think we have a question over here.
Yes.
I have a question. How, and I'm not really up on your product, okay, but just standing back and looking at this, how do you realize what you need in terms of network capacity to either your cloud provider or to your customer edge? How do you, if you're scaling up, you have to definitely somehow work that out in some sort of formula with your carrier to give you the internet capacity you need, or whatever the private network you need. Share that. How do you manage that?
Yeah. So just recapping for those live on the live stream here is how do we predict how much network capacity that we need as we scale up with Nutanix? If you recall earlier, Tony had pointed out and mentioned something called data locality. So we do all of our reads local on the node. Our first write always goes local, and then the second write always goes over the network to commit. We also could do a third write over the network to commit as well. So when we talk about performance and scaling like this, it's very predictable, right, on how we add. And in your infrastructure, we handle all your workloads with 2 10 gig network ports. And smaller robo sites, we can do 1 gig networking because a lot of that functionality that we do with our technology and data locality offloads things. If we look at other HCI vendors out there, they're talking minimum requirements, for 10 gig or 40 gig networking, especially if it's a Cisco product. They like selling networking first. It's a little joke. With us, we've really been able to prove just about any workload runs really well with 2 10 gigs. There's other requirements to scale that up, newer drive technologies like NVMe or 3D XPoint or persistent RAM. You can push more bandwidth through the network pipe. So we could take a look at your read writes to get to your question. Public cloud, everything's offered with 25 gig networking on the back end, and again, we can look at things to help you size that. But being here 7 years, Tony, you 9, have we ever got?
I rarely ever see that become a bottleneck. The only time you ever see those pushed is when you're doing backups or something like that. And then if you want to run those on more NICs, of course, put more NICs in your servers if you wish.
Yeah, and
my 7 years of being here, I've only had 2 performance cases related to that, and it was more of a realization from an app is actually a database side of the house, so where we needed to provision more disk out behind the actual OS, the virtualized OS, to make sure that it could actually push the I/O to the disk. And once we collaborated and figured it out, problem solved.
Yeah, so for the networking, each one of these guys will have 10, 25, or 40 gig networking ports, multiples of them, depending upon what you would need. And then we would just collapse them into 2 switches. So each physical server would connect 1 port into one and one into the other. So everything's redundant. We can lose anything in here or multiples of things and still maintain operation. So performance on the networking side is rarely an issue because of data.
Inside the cluster, it's not. And outside the cluster, we're software-defined network, so we can scale our backbone as necessary. So as we add new racks, we can evaluate whether our backbone is getting saturated, and we can add another node in the spine.
Yeah, these will be, in your environment, are you 100 or 40 coming out of these switches right now? The 2 network switches that are in a rack?
I think it's 40s is what we are.
So multiple 40s coming up. So, and that's plenty for anyone that I've seen. So you may have run into some others, but yeah. So we kind of wanted to go through some of the characteristics of successful IT org because I think it's an interesting conversation. So I love looking at Kohl's' their business objectives and their IT objectives because they always kind of align to the same thing. And one of them is elevate end user experience. So users can be anything in your world. They can be, yeah. So we're talking, it can be developers, different skill set.
Yeah, it's app engineering teams, our balanced teams. We're a product-centric organization. It's our reliability engineering. We kind of follow a Google model with SRE. We're an agile shop that kind of follows the pivotal way of doing agile. But
Mike again.
Yeah, but elevating their experience is really important. So it happens differently for each of the levels, right? So what we in core infrastructure might deliver to our infrastructure engineers, it's a little bit more technical, right? But as you move up, we're really looking at modernizing all of our applications, getting them into, automation for their CI/CD pipelines, right? We're using GitLabs for that and a few other tools to help them out. Abstracting that away was really the key part of that, looking at 12-factor applications. We talked a little bit about being able to scale our modern business critical applications on-prem to cloud and be able to put it anywhere, right, in our stores. So really that's where we're moving towards, is that having that agility and abstracting away the infrastructure and the underlying infrastructure services from the developer so they don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, so the developers get to manage in the way they see fit. So in the developer world, they want to do everything via Git. Yeah. They don't want to touch a GUI. GUIs are voodoo to them. They want to just stay away. So
one of the big things we're changing, and that's why SRE kind of came in there, was moving away from the conventional DevOps sort of approach, because it just didn't really work. Our DevOps teams, especially when they were out on the application side, were predominantly developers, not ops people, and they just didn't know how to do it. So a lot of what we're doing now for our modern apps is we're developing services. So if I can't get the service from Google, we're developing those services and managing them ourselves. So we can put them on-prem, we can put them in any cloud that we're in. So we buy if it's there, and if it's not, we develop that service out for those modern apps.
So you look for best in breed that are manageable, but if you can't find them, you develop them.
Then we develop them.
Okay. So Coles is really good at creating self-service platforms for their users. So you just keep the user happy in the way they want to see their environment, and that's kind of the goal, to keep that end user happy. The next thing is cloud-like. So here's the other one, operate with excellence. So Coles is really good at piecing together a lot of different technologies. Doesn't matter where it is. In cloud, they want to run exactly the same in Google as they do on premises. So they try to build a cloud-like on-premises infrastructure with Nutanix as the HCI, and Google has their brand of HCI, very similar to ours. And they want to use Kubernetes as one of the things you're looking at to bridge the gap?
Yeah, so as we start talking about our modern apps again, our cloud native, this is one of the things that our cloud version 2 is kind of starting to look at, use of Calm inside, creating that virtual data center, just like you could get a project in Google, so that the application developers have full authority to create all of their services that they need inside of their projects. So that is trying to deliver that common experience across both public and private cloud.
Yeah, and open and API driven is key there.
Everything's software defined. It's got to be.
Yeah, because our old CTO used to say, software eventually works, hardware eventually breaks. Mm-hmm. So software will always get better, hardware will always get worse. This is the bottom line. So
software allows you to move it anytime you want, build it again, cluster it, whatever you want to do, you can do. Yep. Hardware, you don't want to depend on it. You can't depend on it in a public cloud. You can't depend on it in a private cloud.
No, and you build in for those failures. That's why you want it to be open, so you're portable, but you want your hardware to be modular and swappable when it's running on premises, so you don't have single points of failure, and you can move the software elements around to other areas that are working if your hardware breaks.
Yeah, and I think that modularity is really the important key with Nutanix, right? As I said, we have just a couple of guys managing 1,000 nodes sitting in our data center. We do patching, and that's easy button. That works, right? They're doing it all the time while active workloads are going on, and we never see problems with that process.
So here's I guess I jumped the gun on that one, but that's okay. I apologize. So, and then another successful characteristic of a successful organization is obviously they heavily automate, and this is what Coles does. I mean, we spend a lot of time with your developers and trying to get into the mindset to think of how Coles is trying to accomplish it, so we can tailor the solutions or the software that we add into our product for them. So we do a lot of co-development work with you guys, where they talk to our PMs to actually develop pieces of code that we can present to everybody, but is very specific to the things that you do. So we work with you, but that's about extracting the infrastructure, right? So those things are very important in your world.
Yeah, sure. I think the vendor partnership is a key part of any relationship, right? We have to work together to improve your product, and you have to give us products that solve our problems, right? And I think that's one of the benefits with Nutanix that I've seen, is that collaboration and that ability to help us solve our problems.
And that's because we are open platform-based companies, so all of our stuff is based on open source that we've modified and stripped out unsecure elements and produced a consumable, manageable, and supportable product. So one of the real key things around automation is creating full application stacks via blueprints. So can you tell me where you are in your journey there?
That's in its infancy, right? Yeah. So in a public cloud, it's different, but in a private cloud, we're not yet there. But that's what we're looking in our cloud version 2, is to have that same sort of cloud-like concept where we can use tools like Home to help us in having that RBAC, that
project.
project-centric view for our developers. I think that's probably a year out, but we're actively working on it to make that happen. Right now, we're just starting it.
Yeah, so they're
It's the journey, right?
Much more advanced on the cloud side because that's what the cloud does. That's what they are. And on-premises equipment, we're trying to get there and merge the two. So
yeah, I think we were a very similar story to other companies where the push from our CTO was public cloud, not private cloud. Private cloud's going away.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Right, so we still have traditional workloads that are operating. We have our modern applications, and we have our cloud native architecture as well, which is really just an abstraction away and app design.
And I like the way Kohl's calls their cloud strategy. They don't say cloud first; they call it cloud smart. So let's do what's right for the cloud. If it makes sense to put it on-prem or not, right? So, right. The other thing is automation should definitely streamline any day two activities. So growing, shrinking, deleting, destroying, et cetera. Those should all be part of the process. So these are pretty obvious things, but automation allows you to do that, to create your platforms and services quickly and reliable. So when somebody asks for a service, they get exactly what you need with the latest and greatest patches. So it actually goes out, grabs the latest builds, all the latest updates, and applies it. So it's an instantaneous thing. So you don't have applications that are sitting out there forever. They're actually built on the fly when you need them. And that's the process that we're getting at with working with you guys in that world. So obviously that'll improve reliability and service delivery and all that. So. And then utilize experts. So Spencer and I, we see a lot, right? And a lot of companies try to do everything themselves, and I don't think that's the best approach because we have several other OEM manufacturers in the room too. We see a lot. We see a lot from a lot of different customers, and we're more than willing to have conversations with anybody about what we see out there, even beyond our technology stacks. And then our vendor partners that we work with, the resale partners, those guys have an even broader swath of how everything works together. So utilize this because it's very important. We understand what you guys are going through, and we've probably seen it before and really can help you, at least to clarify where you're at in the situation that you see yourself in and how we can help you improve your organization. Right. So I know you guys are really good at utilizing experts.
Yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to our staff size being just a couple of people within this space. We leverage you heavily. I mean, in our refresh that's going on right now, I mean, Bob and Spencer are active in the design of our deployments, the architecting of that, planning of it. They know our deployment is as good or better than our guys do. And so they're very active in helping us get those things done. I don't know how we would do it without them.
Yeah, and the nice thing too is that it frees you and your team up to do the things you need to focus on. Yep. So, and whether it's your OEM manufacturers or your business partners, utilize this because we're more than willing to help. And then another thing we see that some of the successful technology companies do in IT shops is they use technology to reduce costs. They don't try to beat costs out of technology because if you have a lot of technologies, a lot of people think if I can just reduce the cost of these, it's going to become better. Use the technology to consolidate out and streamline and simplify, and that'll make a better solution that is lower cost and free your team up to do value-added resources. So you see this.
Yeah, and I think that last statement is the right one, right? Free them up to do the value-add sort of work, right? It doesn't make sense to try and engineer the world when somebody's already engineered most of the stuff out there, right? Yeah. So we want to take advantage of products like Nutanix that have that already built into them, right? Have the support models, have the relationships that they can help us when we need it, and then spend our time doing the business value adds.
Yeah. I mean, bottom line, there's no one better than Spencer at doing the architecting of Nutanix, right? And I was talking to a guy from Okta in the room too earlier today. His engineer is going to be the person to talk to if they want to implement and architect Okta solutions. So you utilize the experts. So.
Yeah, and I touched on this earlier, right? A lot of people approach things by building their own platform when there's a platform you could go buy, evaluate that. When we're talking about reducing costs, right? if you have a Zerto and Nutanix throughout your whole infrastructure, maybe it makes sense for you to evaluate during the next tech refresh or renewal, right? Do we leverage the built-in tools on the platform, right, instead of buying it more? So a lot of those things, some of them are easy wins, some of them are a little bit more work, but those are all decisions and options that come with our platform, right, that you can evaluate and figure out what tools work best for your org.
Yeah, you don't have to use everything, but I mean, I think this is the value proposition, and this is the promise that these sorts of platforms have suggested, 10 years ago when they started to be developed, and even when you go look at SaaS solutions in the public cloud, it's not just the one piece anymore. It's how do I get this whole business process or and manage this as one single unit, because the value proposition there and the tight integration of all those pieces and parts.
And we talked about that earlier, right? You touching on the business processes and the things outside of the technology, right, that also need to be included. And those are the things like, that where we partner and really work well on together, understanding that piece, because we are not Kohl's employees, right? We understand our half. We work with you to understand your half, and we come together with a holistic solution or plan.
Exactly. And then, of course, in IT, we are responsible to the business. So business outcomes are the most important thing. And everything we do should be focused on what that outcome will be to the business. How do we help reduce costs? How do we make it more efficient? How do we improve service delivery? Those are the things we always need to be thinking about, and technology is a great way to accomplish that. So.
Yeah, it's a tool to accomplish these goals.
Yeah, and for us that is the key, right? We have to understand our business, and we have principles, or we call them first principles, right? We have to understand the problem that we're trying to solve, not just throw solutions out there, and then go out and find the solutions that make the best sense and have the outcomes that will solve that problem. And I think that really is key for any company anymore that's got to move fast and iteratively, right? So you're making these incremental steps. You want to learn quickly. You want to fail fast if you are going to fail without, having it completely rolled out. So I think that is key to how, most companies are starting to move towards developing.
Yeah, so it's kind of an agile approach to business.
Yes. Our business is just as agile as we are. They're following the same manifesto that we do.
Yeah. And one of the nice things about implementing the technology, we talked about automation and focusing on the end user and operating with excellence, is ultimately it leads to employee retention, which is on top of every CIO's mind, because it's a tough and very competitive world out there. So if you can keep your employees happy by allowing them to focus on the things they like and the training and learning aspects that they're interested in, and not mundane tasks that, the push button of, I gotta set this thing up, I gotta do this spreadsheet. Automate that away. Use the tools, use the technology to get rid of all that stuff, and you'll have much happier employees, and that's good for every organization. So, I don't know if you have a comment on that.
Well, yeah, I think our guys are now starting to be cross-trained, right? They're learning a lot more about how to automate and develop, how to put infrastructure as code. They're able to start, cross-training more. Because these are automated processes that are repeatable, we can have other people do them, and now we can start, we get the guys who are purely hardware looking at hypervisors, moving up into image management, and looking at other things, maybe moving over to some networking services. So I think it really gives our guys an opportunity to do different things and learn more. And to your point, I think they're more satisfied in doing that.
Yeah, you really do a good job of busting down silos, so it's easier to get things done. Yeah. And that also, being an old IT guy and working through a lot of things, it always was very frustrating when you had to get something done and you saw the end site, but you could only do this piece and you had to wait for the next piece and then wait for the next piece. And it's just not a good way to do it. You need to be able to have push button self-service so that when I needed something, I could push a button and it would go through those layers that maybe I didn't understand because they were extracted.
And the other benefit to that is it's a benefit for us, right? COVID was not the friendliest situation for retail, right? Our IT is a third of what it used to be. And so we have to do more with less. And so this has a benefit there as well, right? It's helping us to enable us to actually make those changes and be agile and to do that work and still deliver business value with far fewer people.
Right. So that ends the formal side. Any questions for Pat on how, any specific questions on Coles and the technology and how they do it? Go ahead.
You talked about cloud smart. I guess can you define that a little bit for how Coles, the decision process?
Sure. Yeah, I actually built that strategy about 4 years ago. We really did try and look at our applications and do an assessment on them. There's a lot of frameworks out there that you can get to. Gartner has a pretty good one. But the majority of them, unless you're hiring some professional services organization to come in and recommend, right? Because usually it's just a measure, and you have to decide what you want to do. I actually developed, using Gartner's framework, created a scoring for each of the critical areas. And then I created an algorithm that actually made recommendations on that as a starting point. When we went into the cloud, we had a complete list of all of our business applications and the subset we thought were good candidates, and we're able to work with an Amazon, Azure, Google, and actually give them the specifications of the amount of capacity we were going to need for compute, storage, and other things, network traffic, and actually start looking at that right out of the gate with them. So we had that all prepared. You look at different things, right? The maturity of the application. Is it already cloud native? Most of them weren't, right? Nothing was really cloud native when we started this. Some were modern to a degree, others were very traditional. So, you had to look at the amount of work it was going to take to transform those applications. And we did those early assessments to try and gauge that size, because we had a certain budgetary amount in mind that we wanted to do over 3 years, and then we focused on the most important apps that we thought would benefit from the cloud transformation.
Go ahead.
Well,
just one clarification. You hear this term a lot. What does cloud native mean to Coles?
Cloud native is really like built around 12-factor applications. It is really trying to design them in a way that best leverages cloud. I can say that not every app did that on its journey to cloud, and we are rewriting most of those apps right now. We didn't bring it back in. Right. We still felt that they were necessary to be out there. They needed that scalability, or they needed some of the services that were there. Yeah. Or there was some data gravity associated with them being there and proximity to other applications. But at the end of the day, you have to design for the cloud. Yeah. And I think that's where, when people talk about the price overruns, yep, it's usually because the app is still modular. It's vertically scaled, not horizontally scaled. They're not stateless services. Their databases were still monolithic, and you have to size them for peak utilization. So many problems that go into that.
You have to design the app for failure, right?
Yeah, and I think that's people didn't understand the networking costs and the storage costs. A third of our costs are storage, right? As you're using distributed applications in those architectures, and you have 6 copies of a database out there clustered together, and you have a DR side, and it adds up
quick. Yep.
How much did it cost Coles to learn that lesson?
Well, Bob, you should answer.
Because the cost comes in having to redo all the apps again. Our data warehouse, for instance, was in essence lifted and shifted, basically Hadoop architecture out there. And for the last year and a half, we've been running that one, plus another one that we've been trying to develop on BigQuery. So think of all that data that's redundant and the processes that you're starting to move over, and moving to a different database like BigQuery, you're touching every report and every analytic process that you had running, because it's not the same. So it's a big effort.
I think that's some of the, Tony mentioned clusters earlier before, and he had one of those cases of lift and shift. It does take a lot of effort, as we've experienced with Coles, and heard the stories and seeing the results come out of it, and the decisions we're talking about now of like redoing things again and having 2 instances of everything. That's the use case for clusters, right? If we have these traditional apps that haven't been refactored yet, and they need to be close to services out in the cloud,
right?
It makes a lot of sense for us to lift and shift those applications on. Essentially, it's a colo Nutanix cluster running in the public cloud, right? And then take the time to refactor the application or wait for your application provider to refactor it for being cloud native.
Yeah, I think that's the right use case for a lot of the smaller to mid-sized companies that really are trying to get out of the data center business, right? But or if they're in transformation, I don't think people anticipate how long it takes to actually do those transformations.
Yeah, it is. It's. I mean, we saw with you is years, 2-3 years to rewrite some of those apps.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's a big talent shortage in that specific area too. It's hard to find people.
Yeah, it's a learning curve.
Any other questions?
I always see people struggle with change management, change control. In a modern data center, how do you guys do it? How do you evolve with these?
Yeah, that is because automation, right? I mean, if you have a repeatable, reliable process that you can execute, then it becomes part of normal change. And that doesn't have to go through you inform people you're changing, but it's not the same rigor of, I need 1,000 manager approvals to make every step of the way, because it all becomes part of developing and delivering a service, not a piece of that thing, where you have all those incremental steps along the way that you have to fight with. And we do a lot without approvals anymore. Historically, we would shut down every change once the peak season would come in. As you said earlier, we sell a lot over 3 or 4 months of winter, right? And as much as we do the rest of the year. And so the risk of causing any failure in those time slots, it gets a lot of attention. But we're doing a lot more in those time slots now because it is a repeatable and reliable process because of that automation.
All right, well, thank you very much for attending today. We appreciate it. Thank you, Pat, for joining us on stage. Spence?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you, Tony. Thanks, Bob, Spencer, Pat. Really appreciate you guys coming out, talking to us today, giving us Cole's background and everything. So thank you again for that. Much appreciated. Thank all of you for showing up. Really appreciate you coming out. If it is your first time and you're interested in becoming a member, please go talk to Katie. Katie, wave your hand. So please go talk to her if you're interested in being a member or a sponsor. You can talk to me as well. Paul, I don't think is here anymore, but you can talk to any one of the board members here if you're interested in being a member or a sponsor. Would like to keep things rolling next month. We are going to be talking about the intersection of OT and IT. So if you're interested in that or know somebody that's interested in where that's starting to merge now with IoT devices and big data, that will be our next topic. After that, we have the golf outing. Matt, I don't see Matt. I thought he was here. Anyways, if you have any questions, we have the golf outing coming up September 15th. So if you're looking to either be a sponsor or participate, please feel free to talk to one of us. And then we'll roll into October, which will be on the people side of the house, which I was very happy you guys kind of mentioned that upskilling and enabling automation, because I really think that's what's going to help solve this lack of, hands on keyboards and this lack of people in the industry. So very excited for that month as well. Outside bathrooms are around the corner. If you come out here, everyone's welcome to continue to join us for our networking social. Stick around, get to shake some hands with people around you. Come talk to our folks up here if you have any more questions that you wanted to take offline on the side. Feel free to have a cocktail or a non-alcoholic beverage as well. And thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it.